Okay, so picture this. She's 21 years old. Senior year at USC. She's the cheerleader. She's getting straight A's. She's in the film program. From the outside, she's literally crushing it. And inside, she felt absolutely nothing. Like completely numb. Not sad, not angry, just empty. And scared about what came after graduation because she genuinely didn't know if she was going to be okay. That night, and she's talked about this publicly, so I'm not sharing anything she hasn't already said, she was moments away from not being here anymore. What pulled her back was her phone lighting up. 15 missed calls from her mom. She picked up, said 3 words. "Can you come?" And that was it. That was the thread that changed everything. Now here's the thing, and this is actually why I wanted to talk about her story today. She also spent years dealing with something completely different. Something much more physical. Heavy periods so bad that she would bleed through a tampon every single hour. So bad that when she was teaching live Peloton classes on camera in front of millions of people, she would stuff a towel behind her bike seat so nobody could see if she leaked. She managed both of these things alone. For years. Because nobody told her she didn't have to. Today we're getting into both the mental health side and the women's health side. Because honestly, they're not as different as they seem. They're both about suffering in silence when there are actual solutions out there. If this sounds like a conversation you've been waiting for, you're in the right place. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. We do this every single week. Now let's get into it. Part 1. What depression actually looked like for her. So let's start from the beginning, because I think her backstory matters a lot here. She was diagnosed with OCD when she was 11 years old. And looking back, she says you could see the signs, the little rituals she needed to do before bed, the socks she had to wear a certain way, the need to control whatever she could control. At the time, nobody really connected the dots. But her family did something that honestly not enough families do. They took it seriously. She got therapy at 11. She learned tools for managing it early. And that helped. For a while. But then came her senior year of college. And this is where the story gets real. She had everything going for her on paper. Cheerleader at USC. Film program. Straight A's. The kind of resume that makes people at parties go, wow, you must have your life together. And she was just completely falling apart inside. The technical word is anhedonia. That thing where you can't feel anything, not even the stuff that used to make you happy. But she'd probably just call it being really, really numb. She was 21 and she was convincing herself she was fine every single day with this perfect performance while inside she felt nothing. The night things got to their worst point, she shared this publicly, so I'm using her words. She was moments away from making a decision she couldn't take back. And the thing that stopped her was her phone. 15 missed calls from her mom. In 5 hours. Because her mom just knew something was wrong, the way moms sometimes do. She picked up. She said, "Can you come?" And her mom came out a couple weeks later. Her dad came to her room. She was really struggling. Not getting out of bed, not eating, not doing the basic stuff. And he sat with her and asked her to say their family motto. They can knock you down, but they can never knock you out. And she said it and something shifted. Not instantly. Not magically. But that moment was the start of deciding to fight for herself. She graduated on time. Top of her class. And then she found boxing. And honestly, the boxing thing makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Because depression and anxiety are these things that make you feel powerless. Like things are happening to you and you have no say. And then you go to a boxing gym and you learn to throw a punch and something in your brain goes, wait, I have power here. I can fight back. I can fight for myself. That shift from feeling like a victim of your own brain to feeling like someone who can actually push back, that's huge. That's not a small thing. So what's the actual takeaway here? Depression doesn't look like what we see in movies. It doesn't always look like someone who can't get off the couch. Sometimes it looks like the girl who's crushing it at everything, who you would never ever worry about. That's actually the more dangerous version, because nobody thinks to check in. If you're reading this and you're performing okayness while feeling nothing inside, please tell someone. You don't need a speech prepared. You don't need to explain everything. 3 words is enough. Can you come? I'm not okay. I need help. That's it. Just get the words out to someone who loves you. And if you're in crisis right now, the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is free, confidential, and available 24/7. Please use it to Part 2. The towel behind the bike seat. Okay. Now let's talk about the other thing she was managing in silence, because this part of the story honestly caught me off guard when I heard it. She's a Peloton instructor. She's literally on camera in front of millions of people teaching fitness classes. She's supposed to be the picture of health and confidence. And she was terrified every single time she had her period that she was going to bleed through and everyone would see. Her periods were that heavy. She'd go through a Super Plus tampon every hour. And because she couldn't exactly step off the bike in the middle of a live class, she would stuff a towel behind her seat. Just kind of casually like, "Oh, it's hot in here, just gonna put this towel right there." Full acting job. Nobody knew. And the part that really gets me is that she thought this was normal. She thought this was just what periods were. She'd grown up hearing it's supposed to be uncomfortable. And you're a woman, this is part of it, and toughen up. So she did. She toughened up and she hit it and she performed through it for years. Here's the thing. And I cannot say this enough. Heavy periods that disrupt your life are not normal. That's not about being dramatic or being sensitive. If you're bleeding through protection every hour, if you're planning your entire week around your cycle, if you're afraid to teach a fitness class because you might leak, that's a symptom. That's your body telling you something is off. And it deserves actual medical attention, not just better tampons. Part 3. When she finally found out there were options. So she eventually had a real conversation. Not a 5-minute doctor's appointment, an actual conversation. With someone knowledgeable about what options existed for heavy periods. And she found out about hormonal IUDs. And I think her reaction to learning this information kind of says everything. She was surprised. Because nobody had laid it out clearly before. Here's a quick breakdown of how a hormonal IUD works for heavy periods. Because I think it's worth actually explaining this properly. A hormonal IUD releases a small amount of progestin directly into the uterine lining. This thins the lining over time, which is what causes the reduction in bleeding. For a lot of women, not all but a lot, this can mean going from extremely heavy periods to very light periods or even no period at all after a few months. That's not a side effect. That's an intended outcome for people who need it. It also works as birth control, up to 99% effective, which for her was a double benefit. She's in her early 30s building her business, not ready for kids yet. So having something that handles both the heavy bleeding and contraception without her having to think about it every day, that was a game changer. A couple of practical things worth knowing. After the IUD is placed, there's a small thread that hangs through the cervix into the vagina. Your doctor will show you how to check it. You just feel for it with your fingers once a month to make sure it's still in place. Takes about 5 seconds. Not a big deal, but important to do. Also, and she brought this up herself, if you're in your late 20s or early 30s and you're not actively trying to get pregnant, it's worth asking your doctor about an AMH blood test. This is a simple blood test that checks your egg count and gives you a baseline picture of your fertility. It doesn't predict the future, but it gives you information so you can make better decisions. Knowledge is power, as she said. The actual takeaway: before your next gynecology appointment, do a little research. Write down your questions. Know what you want to talk about. Heavy periods, birth control options, fertility baseline, whatever applies to you. Because when you walk in informed, you have a completely different conversation. And a better conversation leads to better care. Real quick before we move on, if any of this has been useful today, please hit the like button. It genuinely helps this kind of content reach more people. And share this with someone who might need it, whether that's the mental health stuff, the women's health stuff, or both. Okay, let's keep going. Part 4. The life she didn't plan. And why that's actually the best part. So she thought she had her whole life figured out at 21. Graduate, get a job in film, married by 28, 2 kids by 32. She told this part of the story kind of laughing at herself, because she's 32 now, not married, no kids, just launched a new business on a completely different path than anything she expected. And she seems genuinely happy about it. Not in a forced, I'm okay with how things turned out way. Actually happy. She talked about how her late 20s were the hardest. That feeling of nothing is working. I'm so far from where I want to be. Nobody's taking me seriously. Maybe I'm just not going to get there. And I think a lot of people in their 20s and early 30s know exactly what that feels like. That grind period where you're doing the work, and it just doesn't seem to be adding up to anything. But then she said something I've been thinking about since. The seeds were planted. They were watered. They just needed time to grow. All those years of trying things that didn't work, of pivoting, of questioning herself, they were building something. She just couldn't see it yet. And now in her 30s, she's watching it come together. This connects to something we talk about a lot on this channel, which is that secure relationships and secure lives don't usually come from following a script. They come from figuring out who you actually are, what you actually want, and then being brave enough to build that, even when it doesn't look like what you expected. The takeaway: if you're in the nothing is working phase right now, that's not evidence that it won't work. That's just what building something real looks like from the inside. Keep going. Part 5. The part that hit hardest at the end of the conversation. She was asked what she'd tell her 21-year-old self. And she said, "I wouldn't tell her much. I'd just tell her she's enough." And I've been sitting with that because I think it's one of those things that sounds simple until you really think about what it means. She spent years performing wellness, performing success, performing okayness, adding more achievements, more titles, more proof of value. Because somewhere along the way she'd picked up the message that she needed to earn her place. That she was only as good as what she produced. And what she's learned through OCD, through depression, through boxing, through years of therapy, through period management, through building careers and pivoting and starting over, is that none of that was ever true. You don't earn enough. You already are it. Not when you hit the next goal. Not when you figure out your career. Not when you find the right relationship or have the right number of followers or make a certain amount of money. Right now. As you are. Today. That's not a cheesy motivational poster thing. It's actually really hard to believe. Especially for women who've been taught, in 1,000 small ways, that their value is conditional. But it's true. And the sooner you start treating yourself like it's true, even if you don't fully believe it yet, the more everything else starts to shift. Okay, so pulling it all together. We started with a woman who had everything on the outside and was falling apart on the inside. Who was stuffing a towel behind a bike seat, because nobody had told her she didn't have to manage her heavy periods alone. Who was 21 and performing okayness every single day while feeling completely numb. And she made it through. Not because she's special or exceptional, she'd probably be the first to say that. But because she got help. She got information. She found the right tools. And she kept deciding over and over not to let this knock her out. Here's what I want you to take from today. 1. Depression doesn't always look like what we expect. If you're performing okayness while feeling nothing, tell someone. Any words, any person right now. 2. Heavy periods that disrupt your life are not normal. They're a symptom. And there are real medical options that can help, not just better menstrual products. 3. Informed patients get better care. Before your next appointment, do your homework. Write down your questions. Know what you want to talk about. Your doctor can only help you as much as you help them understand what you need. 4. The nothing is working phase is not evidence that it won't work. It's just what building something real looks like from the inside. Keep going. 5. You are enough right now. Not when you add more. Not when you achieve more. Right now. As you are. Start treating yourself like that's true and see what happens. I'd love to know. Drop a comment and tell me. What's one thing you've been managing alone that you wish someone had told you sooner had a solution? Could be physical, could be mental, could be anything in between. I genuinely read every comment. And if this episode was useful, please share it with someone. Especially someone who's quietly struggling with something she thinks she just has to push through. Because she doesn't have to. And the more we say that out loud, the more women actually believe it. Subscribe if you're not already. New episode every week. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next time. Blue Heart.